Hi everyone, I'm Emma, and you're on the Stories by Emma channel. Let's dive into some amazing stories. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Thank you. The vinyls of yesterday, the old record store on the edge of Maple Street stood in silence, its neon sign flickering in the dim evening light. Sarah lingered by the window, her gaze tracing the familiar rows of records inside, each one a time capsule from a life she once dreamed of. Her fingers brushed the glass, feeling the chill seep through, as a sense of longing pulled at her heart. Tonight, she was here to say goodbye to a part of herself she could no longer hold on to. Years ago, this place had been where Sarah first felt alive. She remembered the late-night jam sessions, the laughter, the friends who felt like family, and most vividly Tommy. He was the spark that ignited her world, the one who had believed in her talent when no one else did. But dreams, she had learned, had a cruel way of slipping away, and so did he. She had let him go, convinced it was best for them both. Tommy had left the city, his guitar slung over his shoulder, his voice echoing in her memory long after he was gone. She had stayed behind, tied to family obligations and promises that weighed her down. The old record store had been her refuge, a place where she could pretend, for just a moment, that she was still the young woman with a voice worth hearing. But as the years passed, her voice grew quieter, her dreams dimmer. A bell chimed as she pushed open the door, the familiar scent of vinyl and dust wrapping around her. She walked down the aisles, her fingers grazing the records like old friends. Each one reminded her of a night, a moment, a song they had shared. The memories were bittersweet, filling her with a warmth tinged with sorrow. She knew this would be her last visit to this store, a chapter she needed to close for good. At the back of the store, Sarah found the record they had always played together, September Nights. The title alone was enough to bring a smile to her lips, a memory of dancing barefoot on cold floors, laughter filling the air. She picked it up, the weight grounding her as she felt the past intertwine with the present. In that moment, she wished she could go back, that they could dance one last time. She placed the record on the store's turntable, letting the music wash over her. The melody was hauntingly familiar, a reminder of promises whispered under the stars. As the first notes filled the empty room, she closed her eyes, imagining Tommy beside her, his hand in hers as they swayed to the rhythm. It was a memory she had clung to, one that felt as real as the music itself. With each verse, she felt herself transported back to that autumn night, the smell of rain in the air and the warmth of his embrace. They had dreamed of a future together, of making music that would touch lives, of being each other's harmony. But life, with its relentless demands, had pulled them apart. She wondered if he remembered, if he ever thought of her when he played. The song ended, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Sarah opened her eyes, feeling the weight of reality settle back onto her shoulders. She knew that holding onto the past was like clutching at smoke. It would only slip through her fingers. She placed the record back in its sleeve, a bittersweet farewell to the dreams that had once defined her. As she turned to leave, she noticed a photo pinned to the wall behind the counter, a faded snapshot of her and Tommy, grinning with their arms around each other. She felt a pang of nostalgia, her heart aching with the reminder of what they had once shared. She gently removed the photo, tucking it into her pocket as a small keepsake, a piece of a past she would carry with her. Stepping out into the cool night air, Sarah felt a sense of finality. The streets were empty, the city quiet, as if it too was holding its breath. She took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs, grounding her in the present. She knew she couldn't change the past, but perhaps she could find a way to live with it. As she walked away from the record store, she allowed herself to think about the future for the first time in years. The dreams she had once shared with Tommy were gone, but that didn't mean new ones couldn't take their place. She felt a flicker of hope, small and fragile, but enough to guide her forward. She reached for her phone, hesitating before dialing a number she had memorized years ago, but had never called. She wanted to hear his voice, to know if he had moved on, if he was happy. But as her fingers hovered over the screen, she realized that some things were better left in the past. She put the phone back in her pocket, choosing silence over answers. The wind picked up, carrying the distant hum of city life, a reminder that the world kept turning, with or without her. She looked up at the sky, the stars barely visible through the city lights, and made a silent promise to herself. She would let go of the regrets, of the weight of what could have been, and embrace whatever the future held. As she walked home, the streets became a blur of lights and shadows, each step taking her further from the past. She felt a sense of release, a lightness that she hadn't felt in years. It was as if the city itself was giving her permission to start over, to rewrite her story on her own terms. When she reached her apartment, she looked back at the street, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She knew that she had finally said goodbye to the girl she once was, and in her place stood a woman ready to face whatever came next. Closing the door behind her, Sarah knew that the last song in September had played, and with it, a new chapter of her life had begun.